Hello, hello. Just wanted to go ahead and get started for this week's episode. But before I begin, I do want to apologize once again for last week. On last week, I did come on a little bit early, and I was ranting on for a good little while. My mic wasn't quite on, so I think I put it in the comments on that episode that the first few minutes, maybe like 5 or 6 minutes, um, was not there was no audio. So if you pick up at that 6 minute mark, you should be good to go. I actually edited the version that's on YouTube, so that should be fine. But let's go ahead and begin. Welcome to the weekly home workshop. I'm Terry Taylor with the Tailored Realty team. Every Wednesday at 12:15, we spend about 15 minutes breaking down real estate topics for buyers, sellers, and homeowners. It's simple, practical, easy to understand. If you're joining us live, thanks for spending part of your lunch break with us. If you're catching the replay, we're glad you're here too. Let's go ahead and jump into today's topic, the top mistakes buyers and sellers make and how to avoid them. And also, today we're at our 12th episode. So we've done 12 episodes of the Weekly Home Workshop. Thank you for being with us. Again, if you want to add a few comments in the comment section, feel free to do so. This is nothing earth shattering. These are, again, are some real estate topics and ideas um, that we go over. Just food for thought, right? So again, let's talk about the top mistakes buyers and sellers make, and again, how to avoid them. So why does this even matter? That's one of the first questions we ask on every segment. No matter how strong the market is, mistakes can cost you a few things. It can cost you time, it can cost you money, and it can create unnecessary stress. So, that's why you want to try to avoid some of these mistakes. The good news is most of these mistakes are avoidable as long as you have the right guidance. Remember, and one of the things I hate when people do is try to make things harder than they really are. Real estate really isn't that complicated, but it is very detailed, and details matter. That's why you want a professional. That's why you want the assistance of a real estate professional during the home buying or selling process. And that's exactly what we provide. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the common mistakes that buyers make. Okay. And we've seen them all, but here are some common ones that you'll see. If you start looking at homes before you understand your budget, you're making a mistake. Understand your budget before you start looking. Number one, you don't want to overextend yourself as a home buyer, right? You don't want to put your budget way out there at the start. And number two, you don't want to look at something because it sets your expectations way too high if it's outside of your budget. A number two mistake: focusing only on the purchase price and not the total cost. Remember, there's a cost to ownership beyond the purchase price. And again, once you go through consultation, you talk to your lender, you talk to your real estate agent, we have a good way of keeping you focused on that total purchase price and the total cost, so you see what you're getting yourself into. Number three, skipping or underestimating inspections. That is a common buyer mistake. We don't push too hard at Tailored Realty, but kind of like what they say in the courtroom dramas. Sometimes you're leading the witness or you're badgering the witness. We're going to badger you a little bit about getting those inspections done. Of course, there's always exceptions to the rule. Maybe if you're a professional handyman or in construction, is maybe not quite as important. But just for the average buyer, please don't skip the inspections and don't underestimate what inspections can do for you. Think about it. You're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a huge purchase, probably one of the biggest purchases you're going to make. Spend a couple of $100s just to protect that investment. Another mistake: making emotional decisions too quickly. That's going to cost a buyer almost every time. And another one, common mistake buyers make: waiting too long to make a decision and missing opportunities. You definitely don't want to get caught up in between making decisions. You want to make decisions as quickly as you can, of course, with all the right information. And the key point is that the best buyers are prepared and not rushed. Okay. So don't wait too long when it's time to make the decision. There are no perfect homes out there. There's something wrong with all of them. That's why when you're having your consultation, we talk about um, some of your deal breakers, some of your must-haves, and then some of your nice-to-haves. Right. So if it falls in that deal breaker category, just keep it moving. If it's not a deal breaker, then adjust what you're doing. But those are some of the common mistakes that buyers make. What's some common seller mistakes? Okay, because again, we're talking about both sides. Number one, overpricing the home at the beginning. Don't forget, sellers, when your home first hits the market, that's when the most eyes will be on it. That's prime time when it first hits the market. So you want to go to the market at the right price so you can attract the buyers, um, the right buyers for your home. Another mistake that sellers make is not preparing the home properly. Remember, this is a beauty contest. You're up against other homes, sometimes in your neighborhood, but certainly within your county or your city or your state. So if you don't prepare that home properly, you don't win the beauty contest. Another thing sometimes sellers will do, they'll ignore the market feedback. Remember, real estate is based on the different kinds of markets you're in. And the market is going to determine what's going to happen with your home. Okay. We have to listen to the market. Sellers, be sure to listen to the market. Over improving before selling is another mistake that we see sellers make. That's why you want a real estate professional that can guide you through the process. You don't want to overspend. You don't want to spend so much money because remember, as it relates to improvements or upgrades or repairs or whatever the case might be, if you over improve, you're not going to get your money back. And that's one of the goals is to put more money in your pocket as a seller, right? And then finally, one of the things that we see common among sellers is letting their emotions drive their decisions. We know this is your home, it's your personal home, and you've been in the property for X number of years, and there is an emotional attachment to it. But when it's time to sell the property, you have to, again, remove the emotions from it and don't let emotions drive your decision. Okay. Remember, the market's not going to respond to what you're hoping for, it responds to strategy. So go into it with a strategy set up, have everything lined up ahead of time, and you'll be able to, again, avoid some of these common mistakes that sellers make. Now, let's talk about how to avoid. We talked about the mistakes. How do we avoid these mistakes, again, as we've laid them out here on today? Number one, get clear on your numbers early. It doesn't matter if you're a buyer or a seller. You want to make sure you know your numbers. As a buyer, you want to know exactly how much you can spend. And then as a seller, you need to know what your bottom line number is. Because if you start in the market and the market makes a decision, maybe time to move that price some. Number two, you want to have a plan before going into the market, right? Doesn't matter which side you're on, you want to have a plan or a strategy in place so that you can follow through on that plan and get what it is you want. Again, for the buyer, most buyers, every buyer that I know is looking for the most house they can get for the least amount of money. Every seller I know pretty much is trying to get the most amount of money for their home in the least amount of time. So have a plan before you go to the market, have your strategy in place. And then finally, you want to stay objective throughout the process. Stay objective throughout the process. Now, let's take a little bit of a deep dive into what it means to stay objective. We're going to look at that point just a little bit further, okay? What does staying objective actually mean in real estate? In real estate, when you stay objective, it means you base your decisions on facts, data, and strategy, or data, however you want to say it. Facts, data, and strategy drive your decisions. That's what it means to stay objective. If you're not objective, guess what's going to help make your decision? Emotions, assumptions, and personal attachment. Those things can wreck a deal. So we want to make sure we're staying objective. Let's compare the two. So for buyers, what does staying objective look like? Well, let's look at the emotional response or emotional thinking versus objective thinking. Emotional thinking buyers normally say, I have to have this house no matter what. I gotta get this one. That's emotional. For buyers, if you get an inspection report and you see the issues, ignoring the issues that are on the inspection, sometimes that's emotional. And then stretching your budget. You've budgeted for X amount of dollars that you can spend, but you stretch that budget just to win the bid. That's emotional thinking. What's some objective ways to think if you're a buyer? Number one, ask this question: does this home really fit my budget and my long term plan? Very simple question. Ask yourself that question. Number two, ask yourself, are the inspection issues that you've come across, are they manageable? Every inspection I've ever been to, I haven't gone to a clean inspection. They're few and far between. I've gone to some where the numbers were low, maybe 7 or 8 issues, and then I've gone through some inspections where it's a whole laundry list of things that need to be addressed. But the question becomes, are the inspection issues manageable? And finally, you want to ask yourself as a buyer, am I making a decision I'll feel good about in the next 6 to 12 months? Am I making a decision I'll feel good about in the next 6 to 12 months? Here's a simple way to think about it. Love the house, but let the numbers make the decision. You can love the house, but let the numbers make the decision. And again, that's why you want a real estate professional. We guide you through the process. We remind you of your budget, right? We help to remind you of your limits. We remind you of your must-haves. So again, that's part of the process, and that's one of the things we help you to do. What does staying objective look like for sellers? And let's do the same thing. So let's compare emotional thinking to objective thinking. Emotional thinking. My home is worth more because I love it. You won't ever say it like that, but because you love your home, you're automatically going to think it's worth more. It's human nature. Ignoring feedback from showings. Because again, that's emotional. When you ignore feedback, that's emotional. Remember, the market is telling you something. If you've shown your house 10 times and they say, whoo, there's an overpowering odor, cat urine or whatever, pet odors, don't ignore the feedback. And the other thing we see sellers do sometimes, and this is emotional, holding firm on a price when there's no activity. If you don't have any showings, any requests, any offers in a certain time frame, it's time to adjust those numbers. And again, that's what real estate professionals are here to do. We help you with those things. Now, what's some objective ways of thinking? If you're a seller, you want to say, what are some similar homes actually selling for in my area? Okay, that's objective thinking. That's what you want to do. What are the buyers saying? What kind of feedback am I getting? That's objective thinking. And finally, what's the market telling me right now? Because we can look at the market, we can see what homes for sale in your area are doing. We can look at those things objectively and answer the question, what is the market telling me right now? Sure, your home has memories, you're attached to certain things about it, but don't forget, buyers are just comparing it to the market. Buyers are just comparing it to the market. So don't forget that. And this is where it matters the most as far as emotional versus objective during negotiations. Okay. Here's some emotional responses versus objective. Emotional reactions, taking offers personally, right? That's emotional. Getting offended by repair requests. Again, this is for sellers. That's emotional. And wanting to win instead of close. Remember, your ultimate goal, this is for buyers and sellers. The ultimate goal is to close the home. Okay. An objective approach, remember that was emotional. Focus on the end goal, which is closing the deal. Evaluate the terms and not the tone. Everybody's tone isn't the greatest, and again, hopefully that's where the agents get involved and we're dealing agent to agent. But evaluate the terms. Don't worry about the tone. And finally, just ask yourself this simple question. Does this move us forward? Does this get us closer to the closing table? That's an objective approach whenever you're dealing with that. So we want to make sure that these are the things that we do to avoid these top mistakes. Here are a few quick takeaways. Number one, most mistakes are preventable. Okay. Most mistakes are preventable, so you can do what you need to do to keep more money in your pocket. Preparation leads to better decisions. So when you prepare good, your decisions are going to be better. Okay. And remember, strategy beats emotion every single time. Build your strategy, have a plan in place, and don't make emotional decisions with a purchase or the sale of a home. Hey, you know what? I hope this was helpful. If it was, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone that can use it. And remember, don't make a move without us. We'll see you next Wednesday, 12:15 for the weekly home workshop. I hope this was helpful. Thanks for joining us. Again, I mentioned this in previous episodes. If you got questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. We can deal with them even after this episode has finished out. But thanks so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you in the next one.